This is Kulali and her owner Garth. Garth was a successful engineer who started building Kulali as his final life project. Unfortunately, Garth never got to see her finished. I've been lucky enough to take the challenge on of completing her build and one day to sail her around the world. Similar to Garth, I'm a passionate engineer who loves to know how things work and how to build things. Join me on this journey to bring Garth's dream to life. This is Sailing Kulali. Alright, so I've cut a few strips of gasket. So I'm going to put strips along the ceiling edges. Obviously a one piece would make more sense, but the only thing is there's a different angle here, 90 degrees, which means there's going to be a joint here anyway, so we might as well test the theory. Okie dokie, so this is the gasketed lid. I've tried to keep this joint as tight as possible. I'll also be putting some Flex and Seal non-solvent based silicone in there. That one's really good, you can see how tight that is. I guess the idea is that when you bolt that down, that will compress and seal that gap. Yeah. All right, I put a bit of Flex and Seal around the outside, just because there's little divots and stuff in the aluminium. Now I'm gonna put the lid on. Okay, I've got a couple bolts in. These are really hard to get to under there. And this is really high. I think there's a warp in the alley here. But that's all right, we'll try and jog it down. Okay, welcome back. So today we're gonna pressure test the tanks after we installed the valves and the lid over the last few days. So what I have today is I've got a pressure gauge, which looks like that. So the pressure gauge, the idea is that from what I've read, you should pressurize to 3 psi. So this is going to show us that. There's a tube, and that tube's going to go to the tank. We've got an inflator, and that inflator is for inflating. There's a bicycle tube seal that we're going to glue into a cap, which is going to cap one of the outputs. Another cap, a valve that I don't need, some thread sealant tape, and a bunch of other hose fittings and whatever else. So we need this valve to go into this cap. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure this distance, and that is 14 mil hole. So 14 mil hole. Sharp knife, isn't it? Okay. It's a good knife. Oh no. Oh. Alright, so we're inside the boat, and I'm sitting on top of the tank that we installed recently with the fittings back here that we welded on. Fittings are over here, and we have everything that we need to test this tank. So we have the pressure gauge, which is now sealed into this tube, and that is going to go onto one of the hookup points. We have that drop down. We have one of these caps. So way too big, but we got one of these caps for here, and we got this cap here that seals that, and then we got this plug to seal the last hole. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use some soapy water and spray around the tank and look for bubbles. If there's bubbles, it means there's leaks in the tank. I'm not that optimistic about this tank, so we shall see. So what we have here, we have the fill port over there, a blocked off port over there. We have a blocked off port here, here, and we also have the gauge here. So the air is going to go in this regulator, through there, and we're going to spray water all over the tank. Alright, so this is a bit exciting. There's a leak there, a leak there, a leak there, there, small one there, leak all along that face there. Hopefully that's on the gasket side. And then a tiny one there, I think. There. So yeah. Alright, as you can see, there are a few bubbles. That was expected. The main ones are around all the welds that I did, and the gasket that I put in there. So a bit of rework required to seal these up again. I think the bolting arrangement might not be that good, and I should have probably used more of the sealant in there. And yeah, so, but the good news is the welds that were already done, there's like zero leaking. So that's really good. So I just need to fix up these welds. They're only little leaks, and then pressure test it again. So yeah, good first step. So I also just realized that I probably don't need shouldered washers here, because if the gasket is doing its job, you shouldn't have any water or any sort of liquid going into this bolt arrangement. So I think I'm going to remove all these shouldered washers, put in the flat washers that already exist, and then increase the size of the bolt so that it's much more substantial. Because right now I'm also concerned that these bolts are too slender for this system. So the increased bolt thickness or diameter will also increase the amount of force on the gaskets, hopefully sealing this leaking that you see around. Cool. So weld up those leaks, action 1, and then action 2, take this off, clean it all up, probably make new gaskets for it, new sealant on, and bigger bolts. And then done. Alright, so I've welded those up because that was where it was leaking yesterday. and that one as well. So the welding made the tape fall off. So I'm gonna tape these back up and then try a leak test again on the welds. So after welding these up, I went to test these bolts here, and I noticed that a lot of them are actually really loose. See, I can just spin that. And that was the worst leak here, and that's actually a cold welded bolt. So I'm going to tighten all these up and then do a pressure test again and then see where we are. I've also worked out that gaskets sometimes need to be lubricated before they're put in with Vaseline, especially cork gaskets. Alright, so I tighten all those up. So we'll give it another crack now with the hose. So after tightening up this gasket, there's much less leaking. There's still one there. So yeah. And there's still a leak there, there, and there. And also behind, right inside that gap there. Alright, after some more welding, there's a tiny leak here. Just a really tiny one. Here, there's one there, moderate. Right there. This one, just in that crack there. And over here, very little. All those are good now, and just this one probably needs a bit more of a tighten. And then under here, I'm gonna redo this tube now anyways. Alright, that's it for today. There's still like one tiny little leak in here. One tiny little one. You can barely see it. See that? One little bubble coming out. Very slowly. And over here, same thing, seeing that little in there? Don't worry about that, that's the tape. But here, tiny little bubble. But all this is really good now. Tiny little bit here, but I'm going to be changing these bolts out to pull that down even tighter. And I need to redo that guy there. So yeah, it's a lot harder than I thought, but at least we're progressing. Might need a TIG welder.